Be Frankie.
Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out, we're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out, we're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out, we're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out, we're stuck in the matrix.
Yo, what's good? It's your boy BDELL. If you're new to the channel, hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. But today we're going to be talking about how the system has reached a culmination process because the planet is at an evolutionary partition that's connected to the Global Disclosure Agreement, Project Bluebeam, frequency warfare, frequency modification, direct energy weapons, and the influx of UFOs when you're talking about the congressional hearing about the UFOs, right? So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we finna get straight to it. Get those notes out because you already know what time it is. We in endgame, right? So before we get off into this presentation, you have to understand something, that everything operates under a dualistic cycle, a seculum of a cycle. Everything has a pattern, right? I already broke that down in my last transmission when you was talking about the 80-year cycle block, right? Because everything has to happen in increments in order to facilitate this new world order system, right? So while everybody has been talking about the mysterious lights over the Capitol building, talking about the influx of UFOs in our atmosphere, one thing you got to understand, you have to use your discernment and you have to delineate, right? What I mean by that is you have to distinguish from what's real and what's fake and what's a smoke screen, right? Because everything that you see and play out that's connected to the simulation is a Ponzi scheme. And the reason I say that is because when everybody was worried about these UFOs, this is what was going on behind the scenes, right? Tennessee adopted resolutions affirming the state's commitment to the 10th Amendment, rejecting external influences that could undermine state sovereignty, right? So this can basically manipulate the restoration of the matriarch by way of reconstruction. Also, Alabama enacted laws preventing the adoption of any foreign law, including international laws, UN conventions that would violate citizens' constitutional rights. Missouri implemented measures to ensure that international law does not supersede state law, reinforcing adherence to the United States Constitution. Oklahoma approved constitutional amendments to prohibit the application of international law or Sharia law in the state courts, and emphasizing constitutional adherence. So all this stuff has been going on when you're talking about the influx of UFOs and things of that nature, because all this stuff, like I said, is part of the dualistic paradox. It's part of the illusion, right? They're trying to keep this illusion going to rock you right back to sleep so you don't understand what's going on, because what they're trying to do is transduce the old three city state government, the shadow government, into a technocrat system that's controlled by a police state, right? Which is basically a militarized force that's controlled by the United Nations, right? So it was not a coincidence that also within the factions of everything that's going on and taking place on the planet, you also just had South Korea declared martial law, right? Because martial law is also working in tandem with everything that's correlated when you're talking about the invasion of UFOs, that is basically connected to the black hats of the deep state shadow government that's trying to manipulate the simulation by way of black swan events, psychological operations, and things of that nature. Now I'm going to show you this video that's basically demonstrating the martial law, everything that took place with, the emergency martial law, how it's connected to FEMA and things of that nature, and how it applies to the end system of the New World Order factions. So I'm going to play this video for you guys for a second. So martial law, and I'm going to show you a publication on how when you have a so-called UFO invasion, which is connected to Project Bluebeam, right? They can enact martial law by way of FEMA, right? Because I told you before that Donald Trump signed the National Declaration of Emergency Act that gave full validity to FEMA, meaning that he still has continuity of government and qualified immunity because he controls the great majority of all the military, not just in the geographical areas of America, but he also controls some factions of the military of Russia and Iran and other allies that's connected to those factions.
Its president declared martial law in the midst of deep political strife, only to lift it after intense pushback. The declaration was quickly denounced by both sides, including the leader of the president's party. The president then lifted the decree after the National Assembly voted to end it. The martial law declaration banned all political activities and allowed the president to take command of the news media. This is the first time martial law has been declared.
Without trying to draw too pronounce the line to sort of instability around the world. I mean, this is just the latest example, isn't it? You've got wars and conflict on many continents. We've got instability in South Korea, which I guess, as you described, as sort of seen as a bastion of liberal democracy. We've got a new government in Japan as well that's not quite bedded in yet. I mean, what's your sense of where we're finding ourselves at the moment?
Like everybody else, shock and horror. This isn't some kind of unstable near dictatorship. This is South Korea, a stable, well-established democracy, and the idea that you could have martial law in South Korea declared on the flimsiest of grounds, I think has horrified everybody.
Notice he said a form of a democracy, because one thing you got to understand about the factions of the deep state shadow government, it's basically a global empire that basically works for the black nobility. So when you see a system or a certain country that's enacting martial law, that is basically manipulating many different measures of the executive branch, right? Which is basically a form of a dictatorship. So when you enact martial law, you're basically bending the constitutional rights of certain individuals in a certain landmass, right? Meaning that you can basically take away their rights by bending the law, by manipulating the law, right? That goes against whatever constitution that's applied to that country, right? So that's what a form of democracy is. It basically inverts the system under a Hegelian dialectic principle: problem, reaction, solution, right? So they create these mechanisms that create many different afflictions, implications. They create many different distractions to basically galvanize that dynamic of a martial law, because they're basically trying to hide something from you.
The Korean.
I'm gonna play it back for you.
South Korea.
We've got.
Hold on for a second.
A new government in Japan as well that's not quite bedded in yet. I mean, what's your sense of where we're finding ourselves at the moment?
Like everybody else, shock and horror. This isn't some kind of unstable near dictatorship. This is South Korea, a stable, well-established democracy, and the idea that you could have martial law in South Korea declared on the flimsiest of grounds, I think has horrified everybody watching the Korean Peninsula.
President Yoon first said the measure was necessary, accusing the liberal opposition of controlling parliament and sympathizing with North Korea. A White House national security spokesperson says the U.S. was not notified before the announcement was made.
Hundreds of protesters descended on Parliament as police blockaded the entrance following that initial declaration.
Inside, MPs appeared to clash with troops attempting to enter before the opposition called enough of them together to force the president to back down. It has been a very fast developing situation.
As you can see behind me, the sun is now rising and it's 6 o'clock local time in South Korea. And it's amazing to think that some people waking up now and reading the news and thinking, what on earth happened last night? Because it was only around 11 o'clock, just before midnight, that President Yoon Suk Yeol announced that he was going to impose martial law, which is essentially a form of military-style government used for extreme circumstances when the civilian government cannot function. It means there's a lot of sweeping restrictions put on people, their right to gather, sweeping restrictions on politicians and the media. But what was the reason? Well, he cited it was regarding threats from North Korea. Now, relations between North and South Korea are pretty hostile, but there's been nothing in the past few days that would seem as an obvious justification for this decision.
Yoon Suk Yeol declared martial law in an unannounced late-night address to the country.
But clearly, a stable democracy declaring martial law like this.
You see how they keep saying democracy. There is no such thing as a democracy, right? Because one thing you got to understand about this system, whatever takes place in other countries is basically an emulation of what's going to be taking place on American soil. So prepare for what is to come, because this is all applied to Project Bluebeam. These are basically many different mechanisms that's coming from democracy in a form of a distraction to basically keep you in a state of control, basically, right? Because, like I said, you got to pay attention to the patterns and the cycles. Whatever happens in other countries and other land masses is going to happen over here eventually.
On top of everything else that's going on in the world, on top of all the other threats to democracy, is really bad news, as one of your earlier contributors was saying.
Yoon is accusing his political opponents of sympathizing with North Korea, saying they paralyzed the government with anti-state activities, but the National Assembly firing back.
So I had to show you that video because Project Bluebeam is eventually going to be one of the key components, is going to be the catalyst that's going to take us into the apex of the New World Order system that's controlled by a totalitarian dystopia, right? So I had to show you that video because we on the brink of martial law. It's going to happen, right? It's going to happen. So one thing you got to understand about this system, everything within the factions of the simulation is based on predictive programming. And what I mean by predictive programming, hold on for a second. And what I mean by predictive programming is that it has to give you a form of clarification that everything that's taking place, right? Because, all this stuff is connected to the congressional hearing. Well, I'm going to pull this up in here in a second, that memorandum, because that congressional hearing that we had on November 7th, that was basically setting the tone and the frequency for Project Bluebeam, basically, right? Because the great majority of the UFOs that you see in our atmosphere are not really UFOs. And we're going to get into that as we get through the presentation, right? So this is where you see an influx of so-called UFOs, which are basically drones that have direct energy weapons, right? And you see them all over the Capitol building, right? In Washington, D.C. So this is basically a form of emulation, right? Because the perception of art imitates reality. And that reality, by way of the art, can embark upon certain situations within the frequency of third density. Because whether if you can think it or create it or draw it or put it in a book or put it in a card game, right? In a realm of probability, it can basically materialize in physical form in our reality, right? So this is why certain stuff, when you see things in card games, video games, books, or whatever, movies, and it starts to play out in real time, like I said, the perception of art imitates reality. Everything is already connected to the simulation by way of the binary code system that's connected to a form of gematria. So everything is pretty much pre-encoded within the factions of our simulation. So that's why this picture that you see of the Illuminati card game is connected to the Capitol building, right? Because these UFOs are basically direct energy weapons. Direct energy weapons have the ability to lower your frequency to where demons can attach themselves to your solar plex or your nervous system, right? We're going to get into that because I'm going to break down the metaphysical and technological energy of what direct energy weapons have the ability to do when your neurological faculties is manipulated and when your biological structure is compromised by the frequency beams of direct energy weapons, right? So I had to show you that because, like I said, everything within the factions of the simulation is not a coincidence. right? So this is just some footage of the UFOs or what they call drones or whatever. This is just a little bit of the footage, because one thing you got to understand about our simulation, when you go to the book of Genesis, chapter 3, verse 5, it talks about the creation of the simulation, not the creation of the world, right? That's because Satan, he separated the intergalactic waters from the third dimension and created the firmament. So that means that the firmament is encapsulated inside of a matrix simulation. It's a dualistic paradox that operates on polarity, which is a form of tricknology, semantics, and illusion. So with that being said, when it comes to exposing the simulation and exposing the illusion, a lot of times there's a built-in firewall around the simulation to where it blocks out anything that you're trying to expose. So anytime that you take a picture or a video of a UFO or a certain entity, a lot of times it's going to make it blurry because the simulation basically discards it out. It's the same process of when you're trying to get on Facebook or MySpace or Twitter when you at school. Those websites is going to be blocked from the educational system of where you at, right? Same thing applies with the simulation. So it's not going to give you the resources to where you can see the truth. It's going to make it look like it's basically CGI or animation or, artificial intelligence and things of that nature. Now, one thing you got to understand is that everything, like I said, is already pre-encoded, it's premeditated, right? And what I'm showing you is a EAS broadcasting system, right? Which is a form of a public service announcement. And it tells you right here, the United States government has issued an extraterrestrial invasion warning, extraterrestrial invasion imminent, seek indoors shelter now. So this is basically what I'm going to be showing you. This is basically a simulated event that's connected to in case we have a alien invasion. Now, this is why it's imperative to understand that you see FEMA at the bottom, because FEMA is connected to a form of Project Bluebeam, right? Because they got to lock down the system with martial law when you have this so-called invasion, right? But the invasion is not going to be really an invasion. They already premeditated this whole situation already, right? And I'm going to show you a video that they did a test run in case we have a so-called invasion by way of Project Bluebeam, right? I'm going to go show you this video for a second. Because like I said, everything in the simulation is already premeditated. Everything is already planned out. They already got the whole shit planned out. So this is basically a trial. It's kind of like the same thing what they did with the last lockdown, on how they basically created a simulated event on video and how it can basically materialize in real life. So this is basically the same thing that's basically applied to Project Bluebeam and the so-called UFO invasion of extraterrestrial life. So with that being said, well, I need you to understand something. This is not a real video. This is a simulated video, a simulation of what is to come in the future. And it was created by FEMA.
Have 100-pound big chunk, and then you chunk it over to 150, 110, always around 100, then you move up to 140, 145.
Good morning. We have an NBC News special report. We have breaking news coming from the U.S.
This critical message is being delivered by the emergency alert system. This is not a test. We interrupt regular scheduled programming to notify you of an imminent threat to national security and public safety.
Government has issued a national emergency for the continental United States, effective until 11:59 p.m. The following message is transmitted at the request of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. There have been multiple sightings of more than a dozen unidentified objects of unknown motive and origin. that have landed across major population areas around the world. These unidentified suspended objects are around 1,400 feet long, stone-like material of unknown nature, like that of a black oval stone, flattened in shape, resembling an enormous obsidian concave lens. These objects are suspected to be extraterrestrial and might endanger civilian populations. The United States Armed Forces.
You see how they're basically preparing you for everything? You see why Donald Trump signed the National Declaration of Emergency Act that's connected to FEMA, that's connected to the Department of Homeland Security, right? So the emergency alert broadcasting system is not a coincidence. This is all a simulation in case you have a UFO event. FEMA already had this whole thing laid out. This is the blueprint right here, right? But it has to be one of those things you have to basically discern and distinguish on when they're going to basically enact this national emergency, right? Because we on the brink of it. Because Project Bluebeam is basically going to be the final form of technology that they're going to try to implement in order to create this new world order, right? So this is why they hold simulations, right? Because I told you it's under the threefold law. They got to give you the truth, because if they don't give you the truth, they have no way to balance out their universal karma, right? I'm going to keep playing the video.
And deployed to the incident sites in order to investigate the unidentified objects. Given the uncertainty concerning these objects, all non-essential services have been instructed to cease, all planned flights have already been canceled, and all ongoing flights have been redirected to the closest airport in proximity to their location. At this moment, all civilians outside of danger zones are urged to seek shelter, pack enough food, water, clothes, medical supplies, a flashlight, important documents, a first aid kit, toiletries, and a battery-powered or hand-crank radio to endure the course of the emergency. Residents in the designated course of the emergency.
Now I'm gonna show you something. Take a look at this map right here, right? So you got to understand about the western and the eastern seaboard. One thing you got to understand about California. California just had a 7.3 magnitude on the Richter scale. They had an earthquake, right? So that is basically going to be the precursor to the big earthquake, the big one, which is why you see California in a danger zone, because the great majority of everything on the western seaboard is going to be underwater, right? And it's all based on the frequency modification and the energy beams from direct energy weapons that they're talking about are UFOs. These frequency beams don't only manipulate the physiology of humans, it can also manipulate and activate certain land masses and tectonic plates to activate this pole shift that's connected to a form of a reset, right? So a lot of the UFOs that you see in our atmosphere are not UFOs. Those are direct energy weapons that's basically causing explosions underneath the ground and it causing the dynamos, which is an influx of iron, to basically speed up in vibration, right? So what you're seeing is frequency warfare. Frequency warfare that's frequency warfare that's connected to a form of asymmetrical biochemical warfare. You see Florida underwater, it's not underwater, but all these places are basically danger zones, right? Because this is all connected to that last solar eclipse that we had on April 8th, right? That basically put an X over the geographical landmass of America, which is an Alf symbol, which is a symbol of the lamb, right? I'm going to play the video.
Residents in the designated danger zones must evacuate to neighboring states. All citizens crossing state borders will be subjected to compulsory health inspection. Refusal of health inspection will result in refusal of entry. If you witness any strange vehicles or objects, you must leave the place immediately and contact the National Emergency Self-Report Hotline, 710-726-7834, 710-999-8274.
Critical message is being transmitted at the request of the White House. A presidential alert has been issued. The following message is a written statement from the President of the United States.
The National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, and other national space agencies have determined that these objects are hostile and originally belonged to a distant extraterrestrial civilization. Attacks from these unidentified objects have been reported from across Europe and Asia. NORAD reports that more unidentified objects continue to descend into the Earth's atmosphere. According to accounts, these objects are containing unknown entities that have dismounted from the object and are wandering across the landscape. These entities are regarded to be technologically advanced. The United States and the rest of the globe are under attack. These entities are reported to be using unidentified directed energy weapon beams. This beam produces extremely dangerous radiation in the form of a beam, powerful enough to completely vaporize anyone in its path. All known diplomatic efforts with the entities have been futile. The entity is said to possess extraordinary speed, endurance, violent behavior, and resistance to conventional weapons. All law enforcement, civil service, and military personnel must report to the closest military facility and take
See, this is why the cosmic convergence of the 144,000 is imperative that we must unite, right? This is where you must tap into your energy. You must tap into your gifts. You must tap into your true power by following your purpose, because it's going to put you in alignment of your own prophetic divination that's connected to the energy of the universe. So with that being said, when you have these entities, like I said, I don't give a damn if you don't believe in extraterrestrials or not, but you cannot negate that they don't have the technology to create extraterrestrial life. So it's not about whether if you believe it or not. They have the technology to create this dynamic of what we believe to be extraterrestrial, right? They can create creatures. They can create creatures that have extraordinary speed, endurance, violent behavior, and resistance to conventional weapons. They can create entities like that. They showed y'all in the first Ninja Turtles movie, right? When you're talking about genetic modification, right? You can use genetic modification, genetic extraction to create many different species, right? We have the technology to do that. We have the resources to do that, right? If you think Elon Musk can do all this, there's somebody behind the scenes that we don't even know about that's doing all types of experiments in genetic mutation, right? Creating Nephilim and things of that nature. So it's not about what you believe. It's about what you know that they have the resources to create. They have the resources to create this everything, basically, right? So that's why it's imperative to understand that, you don't look at this and, just side eye it and just brush it off as something that's basically not, prominent or whatever. Because all this stuff is going to materialize one day, and we got to be ready for it. We got to be ready for it. So that's why I say it's imperative that you get in the gym, work on yourself. Because like I said, I ain't in the gym for the ladies. I'm in the gym because I know the world finna end. Well, with the world is ending, but like I said, we at the end of an age. We at the close of an age. I'm in the gym because I'm preparing. Forget the hoes. You know what I'm saying? Forget, women and things of that nature, chasing women, chasing skirts or whatever. I'm in the gym because I know what's about to happen. It's time to get yourself in alignment. So there's a publication that's connected to the emergency alert system broadcasting system that's connected to FEMA. So this is part of the publication. Now, it talks about how Project Bluebeam is a conspiracy theory originated in the 1990s. According to the theory, the United States government, in collaboration with NASA, is planning a massive false flag operation that's coming from the deep state shadow government, in which they will stimulate a second coming of Christ or an extraterrestrial invasion using advanced technology in order to establish a new world order. Now, you got to understand something. The year of 2025 is the year of the serpent. The serpent is the representation of the Kundalini energy. The Kundalini energy is also the emulation of the rising of the Christ consciousness, when the Christ energy or the Kundalini spirit strikes the pineal gland when it hits the third and fourth ventricle of the brain, right? So a lot of this stuff that's taking place is going to happen in 2025 because the second coming of Christ is connected to the year of 2025, right? That's the year of the serpent, the cosmic serpent, the Kundalini energy that wakes up the 12 strands of DNA that hasn't been activated. It basically activates those dormant genes, these new energies that's hitting the planet, right? And they using direct energy weapons to basically usurp that energy. So, and then an extraterrestrial invasion using advanced technology in order to establish a new world order. And it also talks about the theory claims that the project has 4 stages, right? Everything, what they do, it operates in increments and stages, right? They can't give you the full platter all at once because a lot of people are going to be looking at like, it's going to be hard to fool people. So you got to do it in increments. You got to do it in stages. Otherwise, it's not going to be believable to the masses because they understand human psychology. So the first stage involves the use of technology to create earthquakes. Like I said, you got direct energy weapons, just like you had in California, creating earthquakes, right? All this is basically implications from the deep state shadow government, right? That works in tandem with the Black Hats. The Black Hats work with the cherubim or the negative factions of the Luciferian Anunnaki. So the first stage involves use of technology, create earthquakes, UFO sightings, and other natural disasters in order to make people believe that the great cataclysmic event is coming. The second stage involves a fake alien invasion, which holographic images, a spacecraft will be projected in the sky. This is intended to create a sense of panic and a state of pandemonium, confusion amongst the population. The third stage basically involves the use of technology to create a fake religious event, to create a one world religious system, right? Which is a form of a totalitarian dystopia, such as the appearance of a messiah or prophet using holograms. Because one thing you got to understand about the energy beams of holograms is basically a space-based laser generation oscillating signals. And those electrical signals have the ability to project an image in our atmosphere, giving you the illusion of physical matter when it's based on holographic technology. So using holograms and other special effects, the fourth and final stage involves implementation of the New World Order, in which the world governments will be replaced by a single authoritarian regime, which is a cybernetic dictatorship. This is also connected to, this is basically the table of contents of everything that's connected to that FEMA publication in the emergency alert broadcasting system. And it talks about the what is war, what causes war, the influx of the nuclear attacks, preparation for the enemy, UFO threat, adverse potential of UFOs, emergency action. And it talks about mass casualties, natural disasters and things of that nature, mass evacuation. Everything is already planned out. This is all coming from the FEMA website, right? All this stuff is coming from the FEMA website. It's all planned out. So it talks about here, Project Bluebeam, a controversial theory of technological deception. Project Bluebeam is a conspiracy theory introduced by Canadian journalist Serge Montas in 1994, which suggests that the global elites may use advanced technology to stage events. We are in that time period right now. You see all the stuff they've been doing in Las Vegas, acting like we having a dome cracking open and things of that nature. So this is basically the step-by-step process. You got the fake alien invasion, a global religious deception, electromagnetic mind control, a stimulated second coming of Christ, and a worldwide chaos engineered natural disaster, right? So notice I said something about mind control, right? Because one thing you got to understand about the CIA has the ability to create STEMO receivers, which is a form of lithium technology that can basically manipulate your neurological capacity, that has a frequency modulation system that can basically manipulate your subconscious mind with storage, encoding, and revitalization to basically manipulate the neurotransmitters in your brain to connect you to a form of a cyber cloud, basically, right? They want to upload your thoughts to a cyber cloud, which is a form of energy extraction that can be used with a direct energy weapon, right? So one thing you got to understand the psychological effects of a direct energy weapon. It has the ability to stimulate the skin of a human being because it basically weakens the electromagnetic field of the human that is basically being compromised by a direct energy weapon being, right? So this is why it's imperative to understand the mechanisms and the mechanics of direct energy weapons, which are basically microwave weapons that has a impact on the human physiology, right? So the UFOs that you see in our atmosphere are not really UFOs. These are direct energy weapons, right? So it's a form of optical tracking. So it can basically manipulate your neuropsychiatric symptoms because one thing you got to understand about the EMF wave fields, right? Once it's manipulated, it can cause depression, memory loss, skin burning, inflammation, weight loss, confusion, a multitude of things. That's what these direct energy weapons do when it's basically working in synergy with the nanotechnology that's connected to the genetically modified foods that we eating. Because everything that we eating and breathing in the system has a form of technology in it because it's connected to a extraction of metal. And the metals in our body is working in tandem with that nanotechnology, right? So just imagine what those frequency beams from the direct energy weapon is doing when it's collaborating with the metals and the technology in your physiology, right? It's going to create a scrambling effect, right? It's going to scramble your genetics up. And it's going to put an encryption over your physiology to the point where you don't receive the electrical transmission from the sun as we're going through this golden age period. Now, this is where you got to understand frequency modification, frequency modulation that's connected to a form of frequency warfare. So the UFOs are not really UFOs. So these UFOs that they're basically saying in the multimedia are basically direct energy weapon drones. So these direct energy weapons create a form of frequency manipulation. And when they shoot those direct energy weapons at your physiology, it's going to create a energy beam codec scanner, and it's going to scan your gematria number that's connected to your gematria body because your gematria body is connected to the simulation, and the simulation is connected to a form of gematria code, and the gematria code is Vedic numerology that's connected to the simulation that operates with the binary code system of the matrix that's on the dark side of the moon that's connected to the supercomputer. This is why they call it the Saturn moon matrix that creates the holographic projection within the system. So that's why your gematria body, which is your physical vessel, when it gets hit with a direct energy weapon, it scans a number. And that number is uploaded into the dark side of the moon where they have a supercomputer. And this is how gematria takes place within the factions of the simulation. So there's a catch-22 when it comes to the direct energy weapon. The direct energy weapon not only scans your gematria body to connect you to a form of a gematria code, it also lowers your frequency, it compromises your nervous system, it gives you neurological misfires, heart attacks, depression, brain fog, and it puts holes in your auric field. And when you have holes in your auric field, that means that your fascia system that's connected to your nervous system, and your nervous system is being manipulated that's connected to the cerebral spinal system. Your cerebral spinal system is the epitome of your energetic morphic field. Your energetic morphic field is what creates your auric field. If your auric field has holes in it, this is when you have non-corporeal demons that can take over your physiology. This is where you get the term shadow people. Shadow people are basically non-corporeal draconians who are the 200 fallen angels, or the Nephilim, or Nephilah in Hebrew, right? So these entities, they're able to manipulate your physiology. So you're looking at a form of frequency warfare. They want to keep your frequency so low to the point where these non-corporeal demons can basically manipulate and control your physiology. That's your alien invasion. Keep your frequency so they trying to keep your frequency so low so these entities in the lower third dimension, in the upper fourth dimension, right, in the demiurge, these entities can attach themselves to your physiology. So this is where you're going to get your so-called zombification process, right? Because one thing you got to understand about frequency modulation of direct energy weapons, right? It has the ability to dematerialize the two frontal lobes of the brain. When the two frontal lobes of the brain is manipulated, it puts a strain on the hypothalamus gland, right? That's connected to the brain, because it's going to give you the propensity to attack and bite other people, because now you're being controlled by an entity, right? Non-corporeal entities, right? That's what this direct energy weapon is all about, these fake UFOs. And it's also going to cause a form of pestilence, right? It's going to make people sick, because like I said, when you have direct energy weapons merging in with the nanotechnology that we getting from the food and the air we breathing, we're breathing in all this barium and aluminum and stuff like that. It's going in our physiology, and it's going to create a form of zombification. It's going to create another lockdown, because a lot of people are going to get sick. So that's why it's not a coincidence that all this stuff is happening, that the United Health CEO, he was just unalived during the same time that you have these UFOs. These UFOs are not really UFOs. They're direct energy weapons to keep your frequency low. Now, this is what, like I said, is keep your frequency low, because when these non-corporeal entities, when they hijack your physiology, this is where you're going to start to see more of the demon face syndrome, right? Be prepared for it. You're going to start seeing people who have this demon face syndrome. They talked about it during the time of the April 8th solar eclipse in 2000. In April 8th solar eclipse that took place. They already talked about that, right? And the reason they doing that is because they know that when they have these direct energy weapons, a lot of people are going to be manipulated. So this is where non-corporeal entities can take over your biological structure due to frequency modulation, right? So this is why it's imperative to understand that frequency modulation is also connected to a form of pestilence. This is why this guy said right here, we're basically on the brink of another shutdown. He said verbatim, we have some big picture stuff coming down the pike on January 21st, right? They're going to do everything they can. The deep state shadow government is going to create every mechanism to basically disrupt the reconstruction of the restoration of the republic, which is the restoration of the matriarch for the indigenous people. They're going to create many different circumstances, right? And once that happens, that's when Donald Trump, he's going to look like the hero. He's going to come in, boom, cybernetic dictatorship. Everybody is under a totalitarian order, right? And that's only going to last for a small faction. Then that's when you're going to have the influx of the positive factions of the Anunnaki coming back to basically revitalize everything on planet Earth, once they basically exterminate the vermin of planet Earth, the cancer of planet Earth, right? So you got non-corporeal demons, because like, I'm going to break it down to you when it comes to the three principles of the gases, liquids, and solids when it comes to frequency modification, right? Because like I said, they got to do everything they can to keep your frequency low, right? You're looking at frequency warfare, right? They got to keep the frequency low, because they know that the more we rise up in frequency, the more it's going to cause the awakening of the planet, right? So that's why I said this is all connected to, the seven thunders. And I'm going to do a definitive presentation on that, because it's all connected to California. And now when you go to El's Holy Angel, Revelations 18:8, which is a transliteration, right? And it talks about just for that her plagues will come in one day. The plague will come all at once. The way the world is today, with diseases, famines, pestilence, earthquakes, and wars, right? We on the brink of that time period right now. You're looking at many different forms of warfare, right? So that's why you got to understand, the mechanisms of everything that I was telling you about. Frequency modification, frequency modulation, right? With the direct energy weapons. So you got to read this book right here by Susan Reed, BCS, and she talks about the body snatchers. And she talks about non-corporeal entities, Draconian, Reptilian, Cherubim, Luciferian, Anunnaki, when they use direct energy weapons to keep your frequency low. And when your frequency is so low, this is where they use the non-corporeal entity, the demon, right, to take over your physiology. That is your so-called alien invasion, right? That is your alien invasion. because they're going to use the UFOs, which are direct energy weapons, to basically hijack the bodies of those who are operating from a low vibrational state, right? And it's all showing you and how it's going to connect you to a energetic cybernetic morphic cloud to basically extract the energy of humans, right? That's what it's all about. It's about frequency modification. So that's why it's imperative to understand when we go back to this, the shadow people. Shadow people are basically no other than entities, because like I said, you got to understand the principles of gases, liquids, and solids. So when you see a shadow person, right, you're looking at a draconian reptilian in his shadow state. His shadow state. And then a liquid state operates by way of the liquid crystal technology by bending the photon-like spectrum to create a form of the illusion of physical matter, which is basically the human vessel illusion. So the liquid crystal technology is connected to all technological devices. So that's why you get your whole principle of gases, liquids, and solids. Solids operates when you have an influx of subatomic particles coming together to create carbon, which is a form of physical matter. Physical matter that's beyond the spectrum of everything in dualist, that's beyond the spectrum of everything in third density. So the shadow state of these extraterrestrials is when you get your frequency so low, right? That's your alien invasion right there, right? That's your alien invasion, and they're going to use technology. They use technology to manipulate you. So the shadow state of a draconian reptilian is right here. This is the humanoid state of a draconian reptilian. This is a reptilian in its full physical form when basically the firmament is basically eradicated, right? So this is all connected to Project Blue Book, which basically denotes the fact that Project Blue Beam is also real, right? So they're going to hit you with many different mechanisms to create this new world order system, but you got to be prepared for it, right? And so, like I said, it's not a coincidence that this guy was basically unalive during that process, right? So you're going to start to see a lot of people sick. You're going to start seeing a lot of people start going crazy. You're going to start seeing a multitude of implications that's going to basically manipulate people on the planet. So that's why I said you got to get your mind, you got to do your self-realization, you got to tap in and do your shadow work, right? Or these entities is going to attach themselves to your frequency when these direct energy weapons hit your physiology. That's what's really going on. Frequency warfare that's going to create a form of biological asymmetrical warfare, right? So I'm going to play this video for a second. So with that being said, if you're new to the channel, we got a lot of people that watches this channel. There's a lot of people who watch the channel, and there's at least about 50 to 60% of the people who watch the channel is not subscribed. So subscribe to the channel and share the video. I appreciate you, because a lot of people don't understand what's going on. There's a clarification process that many people just looking at it, all the ancestors in the back of the UFOs or whatever, you have to delineate. I told you that real UFOs operate on crystal technology, and it operates on a frequency band of a different color spectrum, a multitude of different colors. It doesn't have white beam lights or yellow beam lights. Those are basically UFOs that are basically created, and drones that are basically created by the United States government in a form of frequency warfare for the Luciferian Anunnaki. So I'm going to play this video, and I'm going to break it down as we get through the presentation.
FBI is now getting involved in an investigation into these mysterious, apparently small car-sized drones that people are spotting flying over New Jersey in the middle of the night. Look at this. One woman there took the video you're seeing. So that's it. It looks like it's flying pretty low. And from that perspective, it looks very large, right? And all those lights in the sky that you see there, see those lights? Those are apparently drones as well, they say, seeming to fly in a V formation. But the whole saga stressing people out nearby. The FBI is investigating these mysterious drone sightings in Morris County. Residents say they've been...
Notice you see the lighting. That's a craft by, that is a craft by the United States government, right? Like I said, crystal technology is basically technology that's way beyond anything that was created by humans. Crystal technology, like I said, the way crystal technology operates, it operates on 0-point energy fields, meaning that it travels on a frequency of ether, right? Ether sucks in all multitude of colors because it's basically extracted from a form of dark matter energy that creates that phenomenon of ethereal energy, right? So that's how you know that the great majority of real UFOs, they have a lot of lights. They have a multitude of different lights. It travels on 0-point energy fields. So that's how you're able to basically delineate a real UFO from a fake one that was created by the government.
More frequently in recent weeks, and tonight, many people want to know exactly where they're coming from.
Now, we also reached out to Picatinny Arsenal because of reports that the drones were flying over the military base. So far, we have not heard back.
Yeah, Gilma, this one's really a head scratcher for families who live nearby. Are especially concerned because there's a military base not far from here. There's also a number of residential neighborhoods that for weeks now have been seeing these drones almost every single night. And as police investigate, now we've learned the FBI has joined in as well.
It's not a plane.
The mysterious drones keep popping up in the late night hours over Morris County. Mike Walsh first spotted them in mid-November. Now he sees them all the time.
We've been seeing them every night, except Thanksgiving, they seem to take the night off.
Pay close attention to the three-pronged lights.
We're all completely unnerved. I didn't sleep last night. When I would get up and look out my window at 2 a.m., 4 a.m., they were still hovering. I got up at 5:30 this morning and they were still there. As the sun was starting to rise, they went back in the same direction they came from. And I expect they'll be back as soon as the sun goes down tonight.
But they're definitely keeping an eye on the situation. There have been a number of reports of these unidentified aerial phenomena, Hallie, across the country and on the West Coast. So, the government is concerned about this.
Tonight, we're looking into posts being spread on social media. They claim the James Webb Space Telescope spotted a large object about 10 light years away moving toward Earth. The posts claim that the telescope captured the object changing its trajectory in an unnatural manner, meaning it must be some sort of extraterrestrial life. But there is currently no evidence of this. The website Snopes did a major fact check, and the only sources of information on the object are UFO and alien content creators. There hasn't been any official word on it from NASA.
You see, they try to dumb it down or what it's all about alien content creators. You see, one thing you got to understand about when it comes to European mythology, they would never say anything like that is fake. But when it comes to melanated people who talk about UFOs or whatever, that's fake. But when you see other people on the Gaia channel and other people that's talking about UFOs or whatever, they basically give them veneration, but they would castigate the information that's coming from certain demographics of people, right? So when she's basically saying the UFO community, she's basically talking about Black people who are tapped into the information of UFOlogy. Translation.
Space agencies or any branch of Congress.
But people want to know, what the heck are they and what are they doing? It's normal to see red and green lights in December, unless they're coming from mysterious drones in the night sky.
It's kind of unsettling. They're not up for 15 minutes. They're up for hours. Some are very big, probably the size of a car.
Mike Walsh says he's seen hundreds of them over the past 2 weeks from his Randolph backyard and has the video to prove it.
They kind of go slow. They come towards you, then they'll change direction a little. They're all going different ways.
Today we learned the FBI is now investigating.
It was going pretty slow. It had 3 blinking lights, red and green.
Christian Velasquez says he saw it too after leaving work the other day. Like everyone else, he wants to know what's going on.
I don't know. It's weird. It's concerning that there's multiple of these being spotted at the same time. It's not just one of these drones flying around. It's 5 at the same time, and they're all around Morris County, and it's definitely concerning.
It's concerning because a lot of people don't know that these UFOs, which are direct energy weapons, they are cooking your physiology. They are cooking. They are microwaving your physiology. Frequency warfare with radiation, right? Like I said, and it's going to cause a form of asymmetrical biochemical warfare, right? Because what's going to happen is you're going to see a great majority of people start to get sick because of frequency from these direct energy weapons who are posing as UFOs. What's going to happen is you're going to create another shutdown. You're going to start seeing people go crazy, animals go crazy, because everything within the simulation has a form of technology in it, nanotechnology, that is lithium based, right? So, like I said, and it's basically a mechanism and a precursor to those who already took the draconian juice, right? Those who took the draconian juice back in 2020 when we had the shutdown. Now they're going to try to hit you with another one when we get a lockdown because of the radiation that's coming from these direct energy weapons. That's what's taking place, because it's imperative that they must have a lockdown in order to create this totalitarian dystopia. You can't have a new world order without another pestilence. So what you've seen in 2020, that was basically a trial run. So like I said, it's going to happen, right? Because they also know during the time period of 2025, you're going to see the planet is going to have a lot of seers, right? Meaning that they're going to have the ability to tap into the future, meaning that they're going to have the ability to have premonitions and see certain things that's going to be taking place before it happens. So they want to shut down your gifts with the manipulation of, the draconian juice, right? This is why they promoted so much with the celebrities, and they promoted so much with, pastors and politicians. They promoted so much, especially to the demographics of so-called Black people, right? Because they know that our gifts is going to come online during the year of 2029, which is the year of the serpent, right? 2029 is the 9-year, the activation of non-ether. You're going to become a seer. This is why they named it the severe intravirus epidemic respiratory syndrome, right? Because that intravirus looks like a direct emulation of the hexahedron that sits on the top of cube of Saturn. Because the draconian juice, the technology in it, is going to extract your essence of your soul and your spirit, and it's going to upload it into the hexahedron on the cube of Saturn to where you're in a perpetual state of reincarnation, right? So that's what this is all about, because it all plays a part about everything that's taking place. But I'm going to keep playing this video.
Mike says he first heard what sounded like a helicopter from inside his home. By the time he stepped outside, he knew it was something else. He contacted police, but so far he hasn't gotten many answers.
So I'd really like to see one land and be able to report it, but they're up for a long time. I don't know, where they're taking off from, where they're landing from.
This is a video of the Morris County drones with characteristic triangle lights.
The sightings have exploded on social media, some casting doubt, others concern.
People were thinking like UFOs or people are being spied on.
Do you have any concerns about these drones?
No.
And your reaction to it has been?
That's crazy. I wonder what they're looking for. It's all over Facebook and all over our website page.
What's your reaction to all of it?
Well, it's a little scary. I'm like, what is it?
New tonight, where did this drone come from? That's what police in New Jersey are trying to figure out. The CBS News Confirm team did verify the social media post, which was taken near Chatham around 8:15 last night.
We need to get the panel's opinion here tonight. The Morris County Prosecutor's Office says the drone activity was also observed by law enforcement members on patrol, and they are monitoring and investigating the situation. Authorities say there's no known threat to public safety. They're urging anybody with information to contact the police. What do you guys think?
You think it's some teenager?
Real or imagined?
Backyard.
Yeah.
That's a real deal.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's got lots of light.
I think it's some kids.
Yeah.
That's my
control
thing.
gut.
Yeah, no doubt.
See, now that could potentially be a real UFO. Like I said, you got to be able to delineate. You got to read some of Dr. York's publications. He talks about how to basically distinguish a real UFO from a fake one, right? So this could possibly be a real UFO.
The FBI's Newark field office would only say it is working with other law enforcement agencies to figure out what's going on, but at the moment doesn't have enough information to share.
A lot of people want to know what's going on. I think more people are coming around to that, oh, this is going on and maybe it's not good.
Nancy Reed didn't want to show her face on camera, but says she's seen the drones every night since November 18th.
I can see them right out my bedroom window. I can watch them. Last night was about 5:30, so it was earlier. But it's normally anywhere between like 7:30 and 10:30, they're out here. Never during the day. Nobody ever sees them during the day.
One thing she hasn't seen is the normal air traffic she's used to, and she doesn't understand why.
We're in the fly pattern going to like Morristown Airport and Newark, and we used to see a lot of planes coming back and forth. You don't see them anymore.
Look, there's no indication at this point that they're a threat to the public. We'd certainly like to know what's going on, and they are encouraging people to call these in.
Why would the FBI be getting involved in this here? Air Force says unidentified drones have been spotted over
that last week or so. Now, a senior British official confirmed to Fox that the UK has deployed about 60 troops, including counter-drone specialists, to help determine who is behind this and to help defend the air bases amid fears it's a potential coordinated operation. They're describing the incidents as unusual and say this is a serious set of circumstances.
But if we take a step back and look at where things have gone in the last couple of years, we had spy balloons flying over military bases in this country, and now we've got drones spying on military bases, U.S. bases in the UK. I don't know if you know a lot about drones. Not really going to ask you about that. But when we look at these are strategic bases. One of them, I believe it's the Lakenheath, is considered the foundation of the U.S. Air Force's combat capability in Europe. What does that say about our posture if our enemies think they can spy on us this blatantly?
Well, first of all, I love that the first thing the Pentagon did was rule out hobbyists, right? I mean, swarms of drones happened the day after the Sparrow missiles, which are British, went into Russia, and then the ATACMS went into Russia from Ukraine. That's like the first thing we do. We rule out the spy balloon wasn't the Wizard of Oz that flew over the United States for 7 days from California.
But new numbers this morning from May of 2023 to June of 2024 show 757 new sightings, with 21 of them that cannot be explained. And all 21 mysterious objects were seen near national security sites, witnessed by multiple people or captured on sensors or videos. While the Pentagon does not know what they were, they are quick to steer the public away from little green men.
To date, the department has discovered.
So, like I said, we in that time period, right? We in that time period where the great majority of these pastors, they have to come to a recollection and basically, give people the edification about other life forms that's outside of, monotheistic religion, right? Because they all, basically lied to everybody all throughout the curriculum. They went to seminary school and they talking about, angels and demons and stuff like that, but they never tell them that they're basically extraterrestrial, basically, right? So I'm gonna give a quick, rundown. I'm gonna give a brief synopsis about what's taking place. Share the video, subscribe to the channel. So I'm gonna give a brief synopsis about everything that's that I talked about in this presentation, right? Now, one thing you gotta understand, all this is basically setting the stage for Project Blue Beam. That was basically the epitome of what the congressional hearing was basically all about. Because while everybody's worried about UFOs and UAPs and stuff like that, this is what's going on behind the scenes, right? Tennessee adopted resolutions affirming the state's commitment to the 10th Amendment, rejecting external influence that could undermine state sovereignty. Alabama enacted laws preventing the adoption of any foreign law. Missouri implemented measures to ensure that the international law doesn't supersede state law. Oklahoma approved constitutional amendments to prohibit the application of international law or the Shahara law in other state courts. So like this is all the stuff that's going on. While everybody was worried about that, then you had South Korea, they enacted martial law, right? So everything that you've seen at the congressional hearing was basically setting the stage and the frequency for Project Bluebeam. Now, I have the publication about Project Bluebeam and how they did simulations preparing for a so-called invasion. So if you will, screenshot this publication right here, screenshot that publication, and screenshot this publication right here. And this is basically the blueprint about what's going to be taking place when you're talking about Project Bluebeam, right? So it's all connected to UFOs, direct energy weapons, the hijacking of bodies when you're talking about the manipulation of your physiology with direct energy weapons, right? So with that being said, you know, with that being said, as I was telling you before, the system has reached the culmination process, right? It reached the apex of a seculum of a cycle. So this is why they want to neutralize and destabilize in order to control you. They got to hit you with many different psychological operation, distraction after distraction, celebrity gossip after celebrity gossip. They're going to hit you with a multitude of forms of semantics and technology in order to galvanize your attention and put it elsewhere. Because, like I said, the deep state shadow government, the black hats, they on their last leg. They got to create a multitude of things. They got to create catastrophic events. They got to create Project Bluebeam. They got to create the second coming of Christ. They got to create all this stuff in order to make you believe that everything that you're seeing with your two physical eyes that's going to deceive you every time. They got to make you believe that everything is actually taking place in order to galvanize your emotions and transmute it and supplicate it into a weakness and use it for control. That's what they're doing, right? Because like I said, this is why you got to do your own shadow work. You got to tap into the energy of self-realization. What that Kendrick Lamar song say in Heart Part 5, use your heart and not your eyes, right? You got to use your heart that's connected to your willpower and your discernment in order to basically delineate and distinguish and decipher what's going on in front of your face as we're going through this reality, as we're going through this shift. Use your heart and not your eyes. Because when you use your heart, that's when you're going to be able to use your emotions as a navigation system in order to be in a state of evolution. That's what makes a certain individual chosen. They're chosen, meaning that they have a certain energy, a certain edification that they have to bring to the masses in order to pull them out of the degradation that they were basically in, that subjugated them all throughout, you know, the whole Piscean age of darkness. We are basically at the apex of the Aquarian age as we segue into solar cycle 25 in the year of 2025, right? This is why so much truth, we at the golden ratio. So that, like I said, this is why they want to destabilize and neutralize. Hit you with many different fear tactics, right? Keep your frequency low, because one thing you got to understand about these non-corporeal entities that's connected to the demiurge, these archonic forces, draconian reptilian. One thing you got to understand is that they feed off the energy of fear. They feed off the death frequency. Like, best way I can explain it, how you ever looked at somebody and you had this energy, you felt their energy to the point where they had like a death energy all over them, like you knew that they was going to die before they even knew it. That's because a lot of people are getting hit with direct energy weapons, and those direct energy weapons keep your frequency so low. And when your frequency is very low, this is when these shadow, non-corporeal draconian entities, they basically hijack your vessel, or they come to collaborate all on your vessel. You're basically getting jumped by shadowy figures because they're basically trying to hijack that vessel of an individual that's basically going to be in alignment with some type of catastrophic death that's going to be taking place within their lifetime, right? That's why you can see certain people, they have a death energy on them. That's because these energy weapons is putting holes in certain people's auric fields, right? And when your frequency is so low, like I said, you're at a low vibrational state. This is when the demons, the archons, the draconian reptilians, and the shadow people, right? Same people, same entities. This is when they're able to basically extract your energy when you're at a low vibrational state. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, keep your vibration high. Stay in the gym. Stay away from toxic people, because what you're looking at taking place right now, you're looking at the epitome of frequency warfare that's going to lead to asymmetrical biochemical warfare. Keep your frequency high, because when your frequency is high, your health is going to be high. Stay away from people who have a parasitical energy. Stay away from people who just want to be friends with you for no reason. Stay away from people who want to be in relationships with you for no reason. Find your equal, because when you find your equal, that's going to balance out the energies, right? So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this video.